Arthur finds himself in a state where he can't move. His heart aches with sharp pain, and as he tries to endure the agony, a dark aura is released from his chest. It takes the form of a mysterious and terrifying being. Frightened, Arthur shuts his eyes, wondering whether this creature is a manifestation of his inner anxieties or perhaps of his burdens. Just as the monster is about to attack him, a gentle voice calls out, "It's Tesha." Her voice soothes Arthur's hard enough for him to wake up. When he opens his eyes, he finds Tesha sitting on top of him. Tesha wishes him good morning, but Arthur ignores her and pretends to go back to sleep, calling her the monster from his dream. Amid playful teasing, Tesha tells him that her grandfather is waiting for him outside. Since Arthur doesn't pay attention, she drags him out of bed, telling him to fix his messy hair. He snaps back that her hair looked like Medusa's a second ago. As Arthur gets dressed, Tesha asks if he's really planning to stay there. He replies that he hasn't decided yet, calling her a princess. Tired of the formalities between them, Tesha pinches him and warns that she'll get really angry if he calls her princess again. Arthur comments that she's already angry and wonders if she could get any more irritated. After getting ready, Arthur and Tesha leave the castle and see a carriage where Aldwin is pleading with Virion not to let Arthur stay. Both Aldwin and his wife Marielle carry a foolish prejudice against humans. However, Virion ignores the pleas and steps into the carriage, making it clear that he likes Arthur and that his decision is final. Tesha hears the conversation and once again defends Arthur, saying he should be allowed to stay since he saved her life. Aldwin admits he's grateful, but not to the extent of letting a human spread filth on their sacred lands. Virion grows tired of Aldwin's words and silences his stubborn son, who, despite being king, seems to lack common sense. He then orders Arthur and Tesha to get in the carriage. Shortly after, they depart toward the home of an old friend of Virion's. Along the way, Tesha falls asleep on Arthur's shoulder. Virion tells him to let her rest, explaining that she woke up early because the day is important and will determine Arthur's future. He then comments that his granddaughter has lived in a very lonely environment and that the reason she has no friends is because everyone tries to take advantage of her. That's why Tesha always kept her distance from people. Arthur realizes this explains why she gets annoyed when he treats her so formally by calling her princess. Virion adds that Tesha only smiles genuinely when she's with Arthur, and for that, he thanks him for being her friend. Arthur understands how much Tesha values him, and also sees that Virion is a kind and trustworthy man. Soon, the carriage arrives at a house that reminds Arthur Frodo's from the Lord of the Rings. He becomes curious about who lives there, someone important enough for a former king to visit in person. Virion, who'd been acting all noble until then, suddenly changes completely and starts banging on the door, yelling for his old friend, calling her a crazy old witch and demanding she come out. When there's no answer, he presses his ear to the door, just as it suddenly bursts open with a loud crash, sending him sprawling to the ground. The woman scolds him, saying she can hear perfectly well and doesn't need people yelling into her ears. Virion gets up and introduces a grumpy old lady to Arthur and Tesha. Her name is Reincarnated Darkhassen. According to Virion, she's a special mage capable of granting Arthur's wish. Arthur is pleased and says it's an honor to meet someone like her. Reincarnated likes the boys' manners and invites them in. Arthur looks around and sees nothing but a bucket of water, puzzled. He asks how she plans to help him communicate with his parents, since there's no equipment around. Reincarnated explains that she's a seer, a type of mage who can glimpse fragments of people's pasts and futures. She attempts to demonstrate her powers on Arthur, but is surprised to find she can barely see anything at all. Calling Arthur someone special, he tells Rena that he doesn't want to know about his future. He simply wishes he could somehow tell his parents that he's alive and that they don't need to worry about him. Rena then asks Arthur to look at the reflection in the water inside a bucket and instructs him to focus on thoughts of his parents as he does so. She uses her magical powers on him, and, as if by magic, Arthur is able to see his mother, Alice, and his father, Ray, having lunch together. They are still grieving his loss, mentioning that today would have been his birthday. Alice and Ray recall the tragic incident in which they lost Arthur and how they still haven't been able to move on, even after settling in the city. Ray joined the city security force and now lives in a mansion with Alice, taking care of her and the baby she's expecting. As they weep while thinking of Arthur, he finally speaks to them, saying that he is alive, well, and currently in the land of the elves. He explains that he's communicating through a special kind of magic and mentions that he can't return yet because there's something wrong with his body that needs to be fixed. Still, he tells them not to worry, promises he'll be fine, and pleads with them not to blame themselves for what happened that day. Before ending the communication, he tells them how much he loves them. Alice hugs Ray, overwhelmed with emotion at the news that their son is alive. Arthur, with tears in his eyes, no longer wants to see his parents in such a miserable state. That's why he makes a vow to become strong enough to never cause a situation like that again, and asks Virion to take him as a disciple. However, his determination to train is not easily accepted, considering that Alwyn and Mariel dislike the idea of him staying with them. A human living in the Elven City is not something that brings much enthusiasm. Virion and Tesha then attend a meeting with Aldwyn. Tesha tries to convince her father, saying that the boy they're rejecting saved her life twice. If they insist on refusing him, it will send a message that elves repay kindness with hostility. But Alwyn doesn't care. He's more concerned with the interests of his people and fears that they won't accept Arthur in the city. Virion also speaks up. He has never taken on a disciple before, so he tells Alwyn that, for him to ask for Arthur as a disciple, he must trust that the boy is a good person. With little choice, given his affection for both his father and daughter, Alwyn agrees to let Arthur stay. Still, he has one concern, whether the people will accept him. He asks Virion who will take responsibility if something goes wrong. Without hesitation, Virion says he'll take the blame. Aldwyn and Mariel then go to the city gates to receive Arthur. Alwyn stands before him, admitting that he was too harsh when Arthur first arrived, but that it wasn't his fault. Rather, it was due to how humans are perceived. Arthur notices a shift in attitude. The same Alwyn who once rejected him now welcomes him warmly. Indeed, Alwyn loves his family and will do anything to see them happy. Alwyn shakes Arthur's hand to welcome him, but Tesha has a better idea. She challenges her father, saying that if he's truly happy with Arthur's presence, then he should let her take Arthur around the city to get to know it. Since word had already spread about Arthur's extended stay, Alwyn sees no problem with it and allows it. Excited, Tesha grabs Arthur by the hand. She introduces him to some interesting people around town. It's Arthur's first time in the Elven City, and he's fascinated by the people's appearance and customs. She tells him about a famous shop that sells snacks and fruit, and drags him along so they can get there before the crowd. While she's guiding him, a young elf deliberately bumps into him. Respectful as always, Arthur doesn't get angry. Instead, he apologizes and tries to walk away, but the boy glares at him with disdain. He says Arthur has contaminated him with his human body, and continues by saying that even if Virion wants Arthur in the city, he will never be accepted because he is human. The old Arthur probably wouldn't have responded to that, but ever since he started spending time with Tesha, he has learned to behave more childishly, and now he sees the perfect opportunity to put that into practice. The boy looks at Tesha and says that being with Arthur will only ruin her reputation. He introduces himself as Frath Ivar, revealing his noble status, and offers to escort her home. Tesha immediately scolds him, saying his behavior was inappropriate, but she doesn't know that Arthur has something better in mind. Arthur bows sarcastically to Frath and deliberately mispronounces his last name, calling him Ivisar instead of Ivsar, making it sound like mockery. Tesha gets the joke and laughs, but Frath also realizes the insult. Not wanting to lose face as a noble, he immediately challenges Arthur to a duel. However, challenging someone to a duel in this city isn't exactly common practice. All the adults stop to observe the situation. If Arthur refuses to fight in the duel, it will mean he's lost and will bring shame to both Virion and the royal family. So, despite Tesha's insistence that it's unnecessary, he accepts. Faith asks Tesha to be the referee, and the challenge begins. FYH arrogantly charges at him, but Arthur strikes him with a single blow. The proud boy falls to the ground, his eyes rolling. Tesha isn't surprised. She had already warned Faith that the person he would be fighting wasn't weak, and since he didn't listen, he would now face the consequences. She grabs Arthur and tells him to run. He follows her, happy. As time passes, Arthur becomes more familiar with Tesha and begins to enjoy her company. They go out together, eat together, and even study together. Whenever an elf tries to intimidate him, she immediately appears to defend him. After one of their daily outings, she leans on the railing and talks to him. His training will begin the next day, and she asks how he feels about it. He seems bothered by something, so she asks what's on his mind and whether he no longer wants to train. He remembers a conversation he had earlier with Virion. In that conversation, Virion reminded him that he was in a foreign land, without family or friends to support him. He had no one to trust. Yet, he chose to stay there to learn. Virion warns him that the training will be difficult, much harder than anything he has faced before. However, if he stays and learns through everything he experiences, his future will be secured. Virion gives him another chance to quit and asks if he's truly interested. Arthur confirms that he is. Virion then orders him to forget about the pain in his mana core for now. In the present, Arthur looks at Tesha with enthusiasm and says he's looking forward to starting the training the next day. He reveals that he has already been through many hardships and has even fought alongside his father. He knows that nothing he's faced so far compares to what ahead, but he's determined to move forward confidently, sure that he will become stronger. She also extends her hand and says she will do her best. Do her best at what? He wonders. Then she reveals that she will do everything in her power to ensure that he never becomes stronger than her and that they can compete with each other. It remains to be seen if that will happen. The next day, the training begins. Arthur stands before Virion, who introduces him to the new phase of his life. As the training begins, Arthur thinks to himself, life in the Elven Kingdom is faster than life outside it. In just a few days there, he has already learned a lot and is growing. He chose to stay because he knows it's the best decision for himself and is taking control of his future. He tells himself that even though he doesn't know everything he will face in this strange kingdom, what he is sure of is that his future will be bright. He wishes himself great success in this future and is excited to see what lies ahead for him. Much time passes, and even Tesha learns to use her mana. She goes to wake Arthur that morning, but he doesn't wake up, so she uses mana to rouse him. He wakes up shouting at her, asking why she couldn't have woken him up more gently.